Hi, my name is Stefan Korshak. I'm the senior defense correspondent for Kyiv Post newspaper, and we are very lucky today to have Howard Buffett with us. He's here visiting Kyiv. He's got a lot of work going on, and I'd like to ask him a few questions, if I may. Howard, welcome to Kyiv. I know it's not your first time. My first question is, what are you doing here? What's your foundation up to?
So we've been present since about April of 2020, early April, and we started right away on the ground trying to provide food kits to the newly liberated areas and on the Eastern Front to the people who needed it. And then we've been working extensively on demining, which is, of course, going to be one of the biggest challenges the country faces. And then we've done a number of other activities, but a lot also in agriculture. We provided equipment, we provided seeds, fertilizer. One of the other things we did is starting to provide a really large number of vegetable seeds for home gardens for people to be able to plant their own gardens, feed themselves. We've kind of been around the areas that we're familiar with, which is the direct conflict mitigation areas and then the agricultural areas.
And there's a lot of resources that your foundation has put into it, as I understand. It's like a lot of money, if I understand right.
We're putting a lot of money. I mean, Ukraine is our number one. I mean, it went from 0 to number 1. I mean, very quickly because obviously Ukraine wouldn't have needed our help 2 years ago, and so we weren't here and we weren't operating here. And then today, I see it as the largest humanitarian crisis of my lifetime, and that's what we focus on is food security and conflict mitigation. So where those two things intersect, Ukraine, there's nowhere else to be in the world right now in terms of trying to work on those subjects.
Well, yeah, and I understand that your foundation has worked in a lot of places. Prior to the interview, you were telling me that you did a lot of work in Africa, for instance, and this is not your first time in Ukraine. What's your perspective on this war, this crisis, and how it's affecting the humanitarian situation worldwide?
Yeah, well, it's significant. I mean, it's the most significant I've seen. I mean, there's a lot of different layers to it. I mean, the thing that got my attention immediately was I realized the impact on global food security. I mean, and pricing in Africa. I mean, prices in Africa for the everyday individual trying to survive in some places have doubled. And then you have food accessibility is another issue. So, and those countries, some of those countries are on the edge of their own problems, and you've seen it just recently, in Africa with a couple of countries with coups and increased violence. So, food affects that. I mean, food is power,
yeah.
and food drives a lot of other things. So, that was immediately a concern of ours, and then you also realize within the country you're going to have people that your infrastructure is disrupted, your agriculture is disrupted, your society is disrupted. So you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be looking for just some basic needs. And the most ironic thing to me, and I farm at home, and being a farmer, I just watching a powerhouse of agriculture. And you see farmers that are helping feed the world, and the next thing you see them is standing there needing food distributions themselves. I mean, that's the most ironic thing I think I've ever witnessed in my life personally.
Wow.
And it's just wrong, it's just wrong.
Well, now that you're here again looking at the situation in Ukraine, you probably come to some conclusions, you have some views about how the situation is developing, and what would you tell people back in the West, in Europe and the United States, how you see this crisis, this war? What should they be looking for in the future? How do you see those things going?
Well, it's one of the reasons why I come here as frequently as I can. I mean, I've been here 9 times, and 9 times isn't enough. I mean, I think you have to show up. You have to continue to understand the circumstances, see how the environment's changing, and then deliver that message. And so, when I think about people back in the United States, I think that they are getting distracted by different things happening there. I mean, whether it's the fire in Hawaii or whether it's the campaigns that are gearing up. But you can't lose sight of the importance of Ukraine. Ukraine is the outcome of what happens in Ukraine is going to have a huge impact on the United States for decades. It's going to have a huge impact on the world for decades. So It is imperative that Ukraine win this war and that they win it decisively. And it's imperative that the United States and the people of the United States continue to support not just the humanitarian part, but also make sure Ukraine has what it needs to win the war. And then when the war is over and Ukraine has victory, it's imperative again to make sure that the country is rebuilt, can become part of the EU, becomes part of NATO, has the security assurances that this doesn't happen again, which has to be the case, because it'll happen again if we don't put an end to it. So I think for us to lose sight of the importance to the global environment and to us as Americans, to lose sight of that now is going to be a huge mistake.
All right. Well, Howard, thank you very much for your time. He's a very busy man. Wish you all the luck and success in your endeavors here. I hope it ends quickly. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
My name is Stefan Korshak. I'm the senior defense correspondent for Kyiv Post newspaper. And thank you very much for taking the time to look at this.